From the moment Hamdan bin Muhammad al Maktoum took his first steps through the quiet marble corridors of Zabil Palace, the world seemed to whisper poetry to him. Even before he knew what poetry was, he felt its rhythm in the desert winds, in the slow beating of a horse's stride, in the distant melodies of falcons slicing through Dubai's golden skies. He was a prince by birth, but his heart, gentle, restless, always searching, was shaped for poetry. As he grew, the palace around him shimmered with tradition, leadership, and discipline. But there was something inside him that no royal training could tame, a soul hungry to understand emotions, to explore silence, to listen to the stories hidden behind people's eyes. This story is not about Fazza the Crown Prince. This is Fazza the poet, how he was born, shaped, refined, and transformed by feelings deeper than the ocean and older than the desert. From a young age, Hamdan felt emotions more strongly than others. When he watched the sunrise, he didn't just see light. He felt warmth crawling into his chest. When he read stories of warriors and dreamers, he didn't just understand them, he lived them. His mother often found him sitting alone by the palace fountains, staring at the ripples, as if they were speaking to him. And in a way, they were words floated in his imagination like birds looking for a place to land. He felt things too deeply to keep them inside, but he did not yet know how to let them out. His father, Sheikh Muhammad, noticed this sensitivity early. A leader must feel before he speaks, he told young Hamdan. Poetry is not written by the hand, it is written by the heart. Those words stuck to him like a promise. At night, Hamdan began writing small lines on paper, sometimes just a single sentence, sometimes a wave of emotions he could not control. They were raw, clumsy, unpolished, but filled with truth. And truth is the birthplace of poetry. By age 12, Hamdan's inner world had grown wider than the deserts surrounding Dubai. While other boys his age were chasing games, he was chasing emotions. He found himself drawn to old Bedouin storytellers who visited the palace. Their voices were rough, like the desert wind, but carried centuries of love, loss, courage, and longing. Their stories carved pathways inside him. He began to understand that poetry wasn't merely words, it was history breathing through emotion. As he grew older, he discovered the library, a sanctuary of silence where he felt his heart open. He read classical Arabic poetry, the verses of Nizar Kabani, the wisdom of Al-Mutanabi, the reflections of Khalil Gibran. He copied lines into his notebooks, underlined metaphors, whispered verses under his breath. The more he read, the more he understood that poetry was not written to impress, it was written to connect. Poetry was a conversation between a heart and the world. He began writing secretly. At first, it was only for himself. But soon, emotions overflowed so deeply that they demanded to be shared. He needed a name, something that wasn't royal, something that belonged to the people, something that represented his purpose. And then he found it: Fazza. In Bedouin culture, Fazza meant the one who rushes to help. It wasn't a mask, it was a mission. Every poem he wrote was meant to comfort someone, heal someone, inspire someone. He did not write as a prince. He wrote as a friend. During his teenage years, his Life became a dance between two worlds, the world of leadership and the world of poetry. Mornings were filled with physical training, horse riding, endurance, falconry, discipline. Evenings were filled with quiet reflection, reading, observing, feeling, and nights belonged to poetry. When the palace slept, Fazza awakened. He sat by his window, watching the city lights shimmer like stars, fallen onto earth. Each flicker inspired a verse. Each silence gave birth to a thought. He wrote about love, the gentle kind, the patient kind, the impossible kind. He wrote about loyalty, dreams, fear, hope, and destiny. But most of all, he wrote about freedom, freedom of the heart, freedom of the spirit, freedom from expectations. As his poetry matured, so did he. His writing became sharper, more confident, more fearless. His metaphors carried weight. His rhythms carried soul. People began reading his poems without ever knowing who he was. They loved him for his heart, not his title. And that was exactly what he wanted. Travel awakened him even more. In London, he wrote about city rain that washed away loneliness. In the mountains of Europe, he wrote about silence that echoed louder than sound. In Africa, he wrote about resilience. In Asia, he wrote about harmony. Everywhere he went, poetry followed him. Like a shadow, sometimes soft, sometimes overwhelming, but always loyal. But the moment that fully transformed him happened. One quiet night, he was riding alone in the desert, guided only by moonlight. The world felt endless, open, and ancient. The wind whispered secrets. The sand shifted beneath his horse like waves. He felt small, not in a powerless way, but in a humbled, awakened way. He understood that poetry wasn't something he created. Poetry was something he discovered, something that already existed in the world, waiting for him to listen. That night, he wrote one of his earliest masterpieces, and for the first time in his life he felt not like a prince writing poetry, but like a poet who happened to be a prince. As the years progressed, Fazza grew into himself. His poetry began touching thousands. People felt seen in his words. They felt understood. They felt less alone. His verses became bridges, connecting hearts across cultures, languages, and worlds. And although he was stepping closer to leadership, he never left poetry behind. It was his anchor, his compass, his sanctuary. He used poetry to capture Dubai's rise, the UAE's pride, and the dreams of its people. He wrote about courage during difficult times, unity during challenges, and hope during uncertainty. He wrote about horses, their loyalty, their strength, their honesty. He wrote about love, the kind, without boundaries, without fear, without hesitation. And he wrote about the desert, the teacher of patience, resilience, and clarity. Poetry shaped him into the leader he would become. It softened his power. It sharpened his insight. It deepened his empathy. And most importantly, it allowed him to remain human in a world that often demanded perfection. Fazza did not write poetry to be remembered. He wrote poetry because he felt too deeply to stay silent. And in doing so, he became one of the rare leaders whose heart beats loud enough for the world to hear. His journey is not merely the story of a prince, it is the story of a soul that listened, Too closely, felt too deeply, loved too endlessly, and translated all of it into words that continue to inspire millions. This is the story of Fazza, a prince by destiny, a poet by heart, a friend by choice, and a voice that will echo through generations.